The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the endless stretch of sand and rocky outcrops. The desert was vast and unforgiving, with waves of heat rising from the ground, distorting the landscape. Sparse tufts of dry grass clung stubbornly to life between patches of cracked earth. In this arid environment, silence enveloped everything, broken only by the occasional whistle of wind or distant call of a desert bird. But amidst this stark beauty, emotions ran high. A young cavalry boy lay on the ground, his face pale and smeared with dirt, the sharp pain of an arrow wound contrasting sharply against the warm surroundings. His eyes were wide with fear and determination, reflecting both his courage and vulnerability. Nearby, a healer stood resolute against the backdrop of shifting sands, her heart racing as she prepared to save him. The air felt charged with tension, a mix of desperation and uncertainty. This was no ordinary moment, it was a clash between nature's harshness and the fierce will to survive. Here in the desert, where magic was whispered among the winds and danger lurked beneath each grain of sand, lives were about to intertwine in ways no one could predict. The healer, named Amina, was a woman of deep wisdom and grace, known throughout her tribe for her remarkable skills. Her long, dark hair flowed like a river down her back, and her skin was sun-kissed from years spent under the desert sun. Adorned with beads and feathers, each piece of her attire told a story of her lineage, connecting her to the land and its ancient traditions. Amina had learned the secrets of healing from her grandmother, who had whispered tales of herbs that could mend bones and potions that could soothe pain. She carried a small pouch filled with these precious plants, their earthy scents mixing with the warm air around her. To many in her tribe, she was not just a healer, she was a bridge between the physical world and the mystical forces of nature. As she knelt beside the boy, Amina felt a sense of urgency. The arrow wound was serious, and time was slipping away. Yet, there was a calmness about her as she began to work. She closed her eyes briefly, calling upon the spirits of the desert for guidance, ready to use both her knowledge and the magic that flowed through her veins to help those in need. Moments before Amina arrived, chaos had erupted in the desert as cavalry soldiers clashed with a band of raiders. The air was thick with dust and the sounds of shouting men, galloping horses, and the sharp twang of arrows slicing through the heated air. Among the soldiers was a young boy named Eli, barely old enough to be considered a man but eager to prove his bravery. As Eli rode valiantly alongside his comrades, adrenaline coursed through him. He was determined to make his mark in this fierce skirmish, but just as he drew closer to the enemy, an arrow whizzed past him, finding its mark in his side. Pain exploded through him, and he fell from his horse, landing hard on the unforgiving ground. Around him, the battle raged on, but time seemed to slow as he struggled to breathe. Fear gripped him, yet there was a flicker of courage in his heart. Eli fought against the darkness creeping at the edges of his vision, knowing that help would come soon. His bravery shone even amidst the chaos, he was not ready to give up without a fight. Amina's heart raced as she approached the battle site, the sounds of conflict ringing in her ears. She had heard the distant clanking of metal and the cries of men, and instinctively knew that someone needed her help. With each determined step, she navigated through the swirling dust and chaos, her mind focused on the task ahead. As she reached the edge of the fray, Amina spotted Eli lying on the ground, his face twisted in pain and fear. The world around him was a blur of movement, men shouting, horses galloping, and arrows flying. Yet, in that moment, he was her only concern. Ignoring the danger that loomed nearby, she pushed forward, heart pounding in her chest. Amina knelt beside him, her hands steadying as they brushed against the wound. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, and it fueled her determination to act quickly. "Stay with me," she whispered, meeting his frightened gaze with a fierce resolve. The desert might be harsh, but she would not let fear dictate their fate. Drawing upon her knowledge and strength, she began to work, ready to weave magic and healing into this moment of desperation. Amina's hands trembled slightly as she carefully examined the arrow lodged in Eli's side. Despite the chaos surrounding them, she remained focused and calm, knowing this moment was crucial for his survival. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the ancient teachings of her ancestors, and reached for the base of the arrow. "On my count, Eli," she said gently, her voice steady despite the urgency swirling around them. 1, 2, 3. With a swift but careful motion, she pulled the arrow from his wound. Eli flinched as pain surged through him, but Amina remained close, whispering words of comfort, her fingers brushing against his skin to reassure him that he was not alone. As she worked to stem the bleeding, Amina felt a deep connection with the boy. Their lives had intersected at this critical moment in the vast desert. She could sense his fear but also his bravery and resolve. It was as if their spirits entwined in a dance of hope against despair. With each movement, she not only sought to heal his body but also to spark a flame of courage within him, reminding them both of the strength that lay in their shared battle for life. From a distance, Colonel Merrick surveyed the chaotic scene unfolding in front of him, his jaw clenched and fury brewing within. He had trained his men to follow strict military protocols, yet here was Amina, a healer he deemed an outsider, meddling in matters beyond her understanding. As he watched her tend to Eli, his anger simmered. To him, it appeared she was using magic rather than adhering to the rules of battle. "Get away from him," he shouted, marching forward with a commanding presence. The sharpness of his voice shattered the air around them like glass. To him, Amina represented everything he feared, things he could not control and traditions that clashed with his military logic. Drawing his weapon, a formidable Gatling gun gleaming in the sunlight, he aimed it cautiously but firmly toward her. Merrick's heart raced as he grappled with the sight before him, a healer working wonders where soldiers had failed. "What if your magic puts my men in danger?" he barked, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto Amina's. In that moment, distrust loomed heavy between them, and the situation threatened to explode into a deeper conflict that neither side anticipated. Colonel Merrick's mind raced as he aimed the Gatling gun at Amina, his instinct screaming for him to protect his men. The chaotic scene before him, filled with shouts and the clash of weapons, felt alien and threatening. He had faced many dangers in battle, but this healer represented a different kind of menace, one born of the unknown. With her calm demeanor and mysterious practices, Amina challenged everything he understood about warfare. To him, her healing could easily turn into something sinister. It was not just a question of saving Eli but also whether her magic would endanger the lives of his troops. He recalled tales from soldiers who had encountered the supernatural in uncharted territories, stories that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. What if she uses some dark force? What if she cannot control what she's doing, he thought, grappling with his fear. It was not just about this moment, it was about maintaining order and control over his men. Merrick felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him as he struggled to reconcile his protective instincts with a fear that threatened to spiral out of control. In that moment, he saw Amina not as a healer, but as an unpredictable threat to everything he had sworn to defend. Amina stood resolute, her gaze steady and unwavering as she faced Colonel Merrick's wrath. Despite the weight of his accusations and the looming threat of his Gatling gun, she felt a calmness wash over her, an inner strength that had been forged through years of healing in the desert. She understood the colonel's fear, it was born from a place of instinct and responsibility for his men. Yet, she knew that her intentions were pure. "Your trust is misplaced," Merrick shouted, his voice cracking with tension. "You think you can save him with your magic?" Amina took a deep breath, centering herself in the moment. "This is not magic," she replied softly but firmly. "It is knowledge passed down through generations." Her confidence in her abilities radiated from her, even as chaos swirled around them. She returned to Eli's side, focusing solely on him while blocking out the colonel's threats. Each movement she made was deliberate and precise, showcasing her expertise as she worked to stabilize the boy's condition. The tension in the air thickened like a brewing storm, yet Amina remained unfazed, determined to prove that compassion and healing can triumph over fear and suspicion. As Eli lay on the ground, pain coursing through him, his eyes darted between Amina and Colonel Merrick. Though he felt weak, a surge of admiration filled him for the healer who was willing to risk everything to save him. Watching her steady hands work with such purpose gave him hope amidst the chaos. "Don't listen to him. Eli gasped, his voice barely above a whisper but filled with a fierce determination. She's trying to help me. She knows what she's doing. I can feel it. His spirit fought against the despair threatening to close in, and he could see the fear in Merrick's eyes as the colonel aimed his weapon at Amina. Eli wanted nothing more than to shout for the colonel to lower his gun, to understand that Amina's touch was not a threat but a lifeline. Eli's breath quickened as he struggled to speak, wanting to defend the healer who had captured his trust in mere moments. You have to believe her. She saved lives before. Please. His words hung heavy in the air, revealing a bond formed under dire circumstances, a boy willing to stand for someone who dared to care in a world full of fear. Colonel Merrick stood frozen for a moment, the weight of Eli's plea echoing in his mind. The boy's voice, trembling yet resolute, cut through the chaos surrounding them. Amina's calm presence and steady hands contrasted sharply with the turmoil in Merrick's heart. He could see the fear in Eli's eyes, a stark reminder of the stakes at hand. Should he lower his weapon and trust this healer? Could the unknown truly be a source of salvation instead of danger? Doubt gnawed at him as he recalled the countless battles he had fought, where every decision could mean life or death for his men. Amina's story was one he didn't understand, filled with whispers of magic that made him uneasy. Yet, beneath his fear lay a deep-rooted instinct, the instinct to protect those who depended on him. He glanced back at Eli, whose trust in Amina shone like a beacon amidst the storm. In that flickering moment of hesitation, Merrick felt the pulse of conflict within himself. He had to decide, would he remain anchored in his fears or take a leap of faith into uncertainty, trusting that this healer could indeed save the boy he cared for. As Amina knelt beside Eli, a vivid memory flashed through her mind, pulling her back to a time when she had faced soldiers before. Years ago, in a similar desert, chaos erupted as a skirmish broke out between two rival groups. She had watched from the safety of the dunes as men fought fiercely, unaware of the repercussions their actions would have on the land and its people. In that moment, a soldier fell, struck down in battle. Amina had felt the pull of duty. Despite the danger, she had raced to help him. With trembling hands, she had used her healing knowledge and herbs to mend his wounds. The soldier's gratitude shone in his eyes as he realized she was there not as an enemy but as a healer. However, that experience had not been without consequences. Many of the soldiers had blamed her for intervening, viewing her actions as treachery rather than compassion. Yet it was those moments that ignited her resolve. Amina understood that healing transcended fear and hostility. Now, with Eli's life hanging in the balance, she felt compelled once more to bridge the gap between conflict and healing, determined to show that hope could be found even amid despair. In that charged moment, Colonel Merrick's gaze flickered between Eli's pleading eyes and Amina's unwavering determination. The chaos of battle faded into the background as he reconsidered the situation. The boy's heartfelt plea resonated within him, echoing his own inner turmoil. Would he let fear dictate his actions, or could he find the courage to embrace the unknown? As Amina continued her work with steady hands, she remained focused on Eli, her gentle touch reflecting her compassion, not the dark magic Merrick feared. He saw how deeply she cared for Eli's well-being, a quality he had overlooked in his anger and distrust. For a brief instant, Merrick envisioned a different outcome, one where healing could triumph over hostility. With a heavy heart but clear mind, he slowly lowered the Gatling gun. His breath came slow and measured as he finally met Amina's gaze, recognizing her skill and sincerity in wanting to help. "I see your intentions," he murmured, his voice steadying as the tension between them began to dissolve. In that fragile moment of understanding, their worlds intersected, a soldier confronting his fears and a healer ready to bridge the gulf with trust and hope. As the dust began to settle around them, a profound silence enveloped the chaotic battlefield. Colonel Merrick and Amina, once adversaries on opposite sides of fear and misunderstanding, now stood united through their shared experience of vulnerability and compassion. Eli, still recovering from his injury, looked from one to the other, sensing the shift in the air, a blossoming alliance forged in the heat of crisis and pain. In that fragile moment, the power of healing permeated their surroundings, reminding them that trust could emerge even in the most unlikely situations. Amina's steady hands had not only mended Eli's wound but also cast away shadows of doubt that once loomed over Merrick's heart. He understood now that healing was not limited to the physical, it encompassed emotions, relationships, and the courage to look past fears. As they surveyed the vast desert stretching out before them, it became evident that understanding could be a bridge between worlds. Together, they embodied hope, Amina as a healer and Merrick as a protector willing to embrace change. This newfound bond held promise for reconciliation amidst conflict, illuminating the path forward towards healing not just for Eli, but for themselves and their fractured fates intertwined in a land so harsh yet brimming with potential for unity.